My sister-in-law slapped me in front of 200 wedding guests. All because I wouldn't fund their $50,000 dream wedding. If you're just tuning in, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. And please show us some love with a like. And comment below to let us know where you're tuning in from. We'd love to hear from all over the world. The scent of fresh gardenias filled the air as another successful real estate closing wrapped up in the marble-floored conference room. Papers rustled, pens clicked, and another $1 million property changed hands. Emily had built her empire from nothing. Sleeping on couches, eating ramen for months, grinding through night classes while working 3 jobs. Now, at 32, she owned the most prestigious real estate firm in the city. Her phone buzzed insistently against the mahogany table. "Emily, girl, you need to answer your phone," her assistant Philip called from the doorway, his usually calm demeanor replaced with urgency. The caller ID showed her brother Jamal's name, but something felt different about this call. "Emily, thank God you picked up," Jamal's voice cracked through the speaker. "I need to talk to you about something important. Can you meet me and Julia tonight? It's about the wedding." The wedding. Her baby brother's upcoming marriage to Julia had been the family's favorite topic for months. Julia Washington, the woman who'd swept Jamal off his feet 2 years ago with her infectious laugh and ambitious dreams. Emily had welcomed her warmly, remembering her own struggle for acceptance in their tight-knit family. "Of course, baby brother. Is everything okay?" Emily asked, noting the tremor in his voice. "Just, can you come to our apartment around 8? We really need your advice on something." As Emily hung up, she couldn't shake the feeling that this conversation would change everything. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across her office, and somewhere deep in her gut, an alarm bell began to ring. The drive to Jamal's modest apartment complex took Emily through the neighborhood where they'd grown up, where their mother still lived in the same 2-bedroom house, working double shifts at the hospital to make ends meet. The contrast wasn't lost on her as she parked her Mercedes beside Jamal's beat-up Honda. Julia opened the door before Emily could knock, her usually bright smile strained and nervous. "Hey, Emily. Thank you so much for coming." Her voice carried an odd formality that immediately put Emily on edge. Inside the cramped living room, wedding magazines were scattered across every surface. Pinterest boards glowed on Julia's laptop screen, displaying venues that looked like fairy tale castles. Jamal sat hunched forward on the couch, his head in his hands. "So what's going on?" Emily settled into the worn armchair, studying their faces. Julia perched on the edge of the coffee table, her engagement ring catching the lamplight. "We've been doing some serious planning and we found the perfect venue. The Grandview Estate. It's absolutely magical, Emily. Everything we've ever dreamed of." Jamal looked up, his eyes pleading. "But there's a problem, sis. The cost is significant." "How significant?" Emily asked, though something in their expressions already told her she wouldn't like the answer. $50,000, Julia whispered, the words hanging in the air like smoke. "For the wedding of our dreams." The number hit Emily like a physical blow. $50,000. More than their mother made in a year. 50,000? Emily's voice barely concealed her shock. "Jamal, you work at the automotive shop, and Julia, you're still finishing nursing school. How exactly were you planning to pay for this?" The silence stretched uncomfortably until Julia spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "We were hoping, since you've been so successful, maybe you could help us out." Emily felt the walls of the small apartment closing in. She thought about her own modest wedding 5 years ago, a simple ceremony in their childhood church, followed by a reception in the community center basement. It had cost $3,000 total, and even that had been a stretch. "Help out how?" Emily asked, though she already knew the answer. Jamal finally looked up, tears glistening in his eyes. "Emily, you're the only person we know who could make this happen. This wedding, it means everything to Julia. She's never had anything beautiful in her life." The emotional manipulation was subtle but present. Emily remembered Julia's stories about growing up in foster care, bouncing between homes, never having stability. The part of her that had worked so hard to lift up her family wanted to say yes immediately. "I need to think about this," Emily said carefully. $50,000 isn't pocket change even for me." Julia's face crumpled. "Of course we understand. We just thought, since family is so important to you." As Emily drove home that night, She couldn't escape the feeling that she'd just failed some invisible test. But $50,000? For one day. Something about the whole situation felt wrong. Sleep eluded Emily that night. She found herself in her home office at 2 a.m., researching wedding costs and budgets. What she discovered made her stomach churn. The average wedding in their area cost $12,000, and that was considered expensive by most standards. She pulled up the Grandview Estate website. The venue was stunning, no doubt about it. Rolling hills, crystal chandeliers, gardens that looked like something from a movie set. But as she scrolled through the package details, red flags began appearing everywhere. The base venue rental was only $15,000. Where was the other $35,000 going? Her phone rang, startling her. "Mama" appeared on the screen. "Baby girl, you up? I just got off my shift and saw your light on from the street." Their mother, Avellini, lived only 3 blocks away. Within minutes, she was sitting in Emily's kitchen, still wearing her hospital scrubs, wrapping her hands around a steaming mug of tea. "Jamal told me about their conversation with you tonight," Avellini said gently. "That boy's been pacing around my living room for hours, worried sick he upset you." "Mama, they want $50,000 for a wedding." $50,000. Emily shook her head. "That's more than you make in a year." Avellini's expression hardened slightly. "And what did you tell them?" "That I needed to think about it." "Good." Avellini's voice carried a firmness that surprised Emily. "Because baby, I raised you better than to throw money away on foolishness no matter who's asking." The conviction in her mother's voice strengthened Emily's resolve. Maybe she wasn't being selfish after all. The next morning brought a text from Julia that made Emily's blood run cold. "Hey girl. Just wanted you to know I told my foster sister about your success story. She's so inspired by how you've lifted up your family." The subtext was clear. Julia was telling people that Emily would be funding the wedding. By noon, Emily's phone was buzzing with calls from extended family members she hadn't heard from in months. Cousin Sylvia called first. "Girl, Julia told me about the wedding plans. How exciting that you're making their dreams come true." Uncle Robert followed. "Emily, baby, that's so generous of you to help with the wedding. You know how proud we all are of your success." Each call twisted the knife deeper. Emily realized that Julia had orchestrated a masterful manipulation, making it seem like the decision was already made, that backing out now would make Emily look selfish and cruel. Her assistant Philip knocked on her office door around 3 p.m. "Your brother's here to see you. He looks stressed." Jamal entered her office looking like he hadn't slept. His work clothes were wrinkled and there were dark circles under his eyes. "Emily, I messed up," he said without preamble. "Julia got excited last night and started telling people about the wedding plans. She didn't mean any harm, but now everyone thinks. Everyone thinks I'm paying for it," Emily finished. "I tried to explain that you were just thinking about it, but Julia said that would make us look foolish. She said people might think we were lying about having family support." The web was tightening and Emily could feel herself being pushed toward a decision she wasn't ready to make. That evening, Emily found herself back at Jamal and Julia's apartment, but this time the atmosphere was electric with tension. Julia had laid out a complete wedding plan, vendor contracts, seating charts, even sample invitations with Emily listed as the proud sponsor. "I took the liberty of putting down deposits," Julia announced, her voice trembling with barely contained excitement. "But don't worry, I used my credit card. I figured you'd reimburse me once you saw how perfect everything is." Emily stared at the paperwork spread across the coffee table. $5,000 in deposits already spent. The trap was complete. "Julia, we talked about this," Jamal said weakly. "We were supposed to wait for Emily's answer. But baby, look at these contracts. The vendors were booking up so fast. I couldn't risk losing our dream wedding over paperwork delays." Julia's eyes glistened with tears that looked suspiciously rehearsed. Emily picked up one of the contracts. A florist charging $8,000 for centerpieces. Another vendor wanted $3,000 just for upgraded linens. The numbers were astronomical, completely divorced from reality. "Julia," Emily said carefully, "some of these prices seem inflated. This florist is charging triple what I paid for flowers at my own wedding." Julia's expression shifted slightly, a flash of something cold crossing her features before the tears returned. "Well, maybe you settled for less than you deserved. I just want our special day to be perfect." The implied criticism hit Emily like a slap. Her own wedding had been beautiful, filled with love and surrounded by family who celebrated without caring about price tags or social media appearances. "I think we need to talk about more reasonable options," Emily said firmly. Julia's tears stopped as if someone had turned off a faucet. "More reasonable options?" Julia's voice had lost all traces of vulnerability. "Emily, you drive a $100,000 car. You live in a mansion. You spend more on handbags than most people make in a month. But your own brother's wedding isn't worth $50,000. The transformation was startling. Gone was the sweet, grateful future sister-in-law. In her place stood someone calculating and cold, someone who had clearly been hiding her true nature behind a carefully constructed facade. Jamal looked stunned. "Julia, that's not fair. Emily works hard for everything she has." "Does she, though?" Julia turned to face him. "Or did she just get lucky in real estate while the rest of us struggle? Some people are born with advantages, Jamal. Some people have privilege they don't even recognize." Emily felt her temper rising. "Privilege? I grew up in the same house you visit every Sunday. I ate the same government cheese and wore the same hand-me-down clothes. I built everything I have from scratch. By stepping on people like us," Julia shot back. "By charging families more than they can afford for houses, by gentrifying neighborhoods, by—" "That's enough." Jamal's voice cracked like a whip through the small apartment. "Julia, what has gotten into you? This isn't who you are." But Emily was beginning to realize that maybe this was exactly who Julia was. The sweet, struggling nursing student might have been the mask. This bitter, entitled woman demanding $50,000. This might be the real person her brother had fallen in love with. "I'm not paying for this wedding," Emily said quietly. "Not $50,000, not $5,000. If you want to get married, you can afford it yourselves like adults." The silence that followed was deafening. Julia's laugh was bitter and sharp, cutting through the apartment like broken glass. "Fine. Then you're not invited." "What?" Jamal stepped between them, his face pale with shock. "Julia, you can't uninvite my sister from our wedding. Watch me." Julia crossed her arms. "If she doesn't care enough about our happiness to help us, then she doesn't deserve to witness our special day. Family supports family, Jamal. Real family." Emily stood up slowly, her business training kicking in. She'd dealt with hostile negotiations before, but never with someone who was supposed to become family. "That's your choice, Julia. But Jamal, you know where to find me when you come to your senses." As she headed toward the door, Julia's voice followed her. "Don't expect us to come crawling back. There are plenty of people who would be honored to help us celebrate love." Outside in the parking lot, Emily sat in her car for 10 minutes, hands shaking as she processed what had just happened. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jamal. "I'm so sorry. Let me fix this." But some things Emily realized couldn't be fixed with apologies. Over the next 2 weeks, the family pressure intensified. Aunts who hadn't spoken to Emily in years suddenly had opinions about her selfishness. Cousins shared passive-aggressive posts on social media about family loyalty. Even her mother received criticism at church from people who thought Emily should just write the check and keep the peace. Through it all, Avellini remained steadfast. "Baby girl, you did the right thing. That woman showed you exactly who she is. Believe her." But Emily couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. Philip knocked on Emily's office door with an expression she'd never seen before, concern mixed with something that looked like fear. "Boss, you need to see this." He handed her a manila folder. "I did some digging on Julia Washington just to be safe. What I found, it's not good." Inside the folder were printouts from social media accounts, credit reports, and public records. Emily's hands trembled as she read through the documents. Julia hadn't been honest about her past. The foster care story was true but incomplete. She'd been in the system because her mother had been arrested for running elaborate financial scams, targeting wealthy families and religious communities. More disturbing were the social media screenshots from Julia's private accounts, where she bragged to friends about landing a rich man's sister, and detailed plans to milk the family for everything they're worth. "There's more," Philip said grimly. "I found records of 2 previous engagements. Both times she convinced the men's families to invest in her nursing school education. Both engagements ended after she disappeared with the money." Emily's stomach dropped. "Does Jamal know any of this?" I doubt it. She's been very careful to keep these accounts separate from anything he might see. The final document in the folder was the most damning. A credit report showing Julia was drowning in debt. Student loans, credit cards, even money owed to previous landlords. The $50,000 wasn't for a dream wedding. It was to pay off her creditors and start fresh. Emily reached for her phone to call Jamal, then stopped. Would he even believe her? Julia had spent 2 years carefully constructing the perfect girlfriend persona. One folder of evidence might not be enough to break through that kind of manipulation. Philip, I need you to make copies of everything. If this goes where I think it's going, we're going to need proof. Emily waited until evening to drive to Jamal's apartment, the folder of evidence burning like fire in her passenger seat. She found her brother alone, sitting on his front steps with a beer in his hand and despair written across his face. She's been acting strange, he said before Emily could speak. Ever since you said no to the money. It's like she's a different person. Emily sat beside him, the folder balanced on her knees. Jamal, I need to show you something. And I need you to promise me you'll look at it with an open mind. What followed was the most difficult conversation of Emily's life. She watched her brother's face cycle through disbelief, anger, denial, and finally devastating recognition as he absorbed the truth about the woman he'd planned to marry. The foster care story? He asked weakly. True but not complete. She left out the part about why she was in foster care. The nursing school? She dropped out 6 months ago. She's been pretending to go to classes while working various schemes around the city. Jamal's hands shook as he flipped through the social media screenshots. Reading Julia's private messages about him, calling him the mark, and joking about his pathetic family, broke something fundamental inside him. 2 years, he whispered. 2 years of lies. I'm sorry, baby brother. I wish I could have prevented this. Jamal looked up at her with tears streaming down his face. She's going to be furious when she finds out, I know. The wedding is in 3 days, Emily. She's already told everyone it's happening. 200 people are expecting to see us get married. Neither of them spoke for a long moment, both understanding the impossible position Julia had created. What am I supposed to do now? The Grandview estate looked exactly as beautiful as the website had promised. Despite everything, Emily had to admit that Julia had exquisite taste, even if it was taste she couldn't afford and had no intention of paying for herself. Emily sat in her car in the parking lot, watching guests arrive in their finest clothes. She hadn't been invited, but Jamal had begged her to come anyway. I can't do this alone, he'd said. If everything falls apart, I need you there. The plan was simple. Jamal would pull Julia aside before the ceremony and confront her with the evidence. Give her a chance to come clean, maybe even work together to call off the wedding with some dignity intact. But as Emily watched through the estate's floor-to-ceiling windows, she could see the plan wasn't working. Julia, resplendent in a designer gown that probably cost more than most people's cars, was holding court like a queen. She'd surrounded herself with bridesmaids and family members, making it impossible for Jamal to get her alone. The ceremony was starting. 200 guests filled the ornate chairs arranged in perfect rows across the manicured lawn. Emily could see Jamal at the altar, looking sick with anxiety, while the wedding party processed down the aisle to classical music. Then Julia appeared at the head of the aisle, and even from a distance, Emily could see her triumphant smile. This was her moment, the culmination of a 2-year con, the jackpot she'd been working toward since the day she'd met Jamal. But as she glided down the aisle, Julia's eyes found Emily through the window. Their gazes locked across the distance, and Julia's perfect smile faltered for just a moment. That's when Emily knew. The confrontation was coming, and it wouldn't be private. The ceremony proceeded beautifully until the moment when the officiant asked if anyone had reasons why Jamal and Julia should not be wed. The silence stretched just a beat too long, and Emily saw Jamal's resolve crumbling. He couldn't do it. Even knowing everything he knew, her baby brother couldn't bring himself to expose Julia in front of 200 people. That's when Emily made the decision that would haunt her for years. She walked through the estate's front doors, her heels clicking against marble floors as every head turned to watch her unexpected entrance. I'm sorry to interrupt, she said, her voice carrying clearly across the hushed crowd. But there's something everyone needs to know before this ceremony continues. Julia's face went through a transformation that was terrible to witness. The mask of the sweet bride dissolved, replaced by pure rage and calculation. How dare you? Security. Get this woman out of here. But there was no security. This was a family wedding, not a corporate event. Emily walked steadily down the aisle, Philip beside her carrying copies of the evidence they'd gathered. Jamal asked me to help pay for this wedding, Emily announced to the stunned crowd. $50,000 for one day. When I said no, I was uninvited. But tonight I discovered why that money was so important. She began reading from Julia's private messages, her voice steady despite the chaos erupting around her. Guests gasped as they heard Julia's real thoughts about the pathetic family she was marrying into, her plans to bleed them dry, and her boasts about previous successful cons. That's when Julia snapped. "You jealous bitch," she screamed, launching herself off the altar platform. "You can't stand that someone else might be happy." The slap echoed across the estate grounds like a gunshot. 200 guests sat in stunned silence as Julia's hand connected with Emily's cheek, the force of it sending her stumbling backward. But Emily had been in worse confrontations. She straightened, touched her burning cheek, and smiled grimly. "Thank you," Emily said calmly, her voice carrying to every corner of the silent estate. "You just showed everyone exactly who you really are." The aftermath was swift and devastating. Julia's foster sister, who had traveled from 3 states away, stood up from her seat with tears in her eyes. "It's true," she said, her voice breaking. "Everything she just said. Julia did the same thing to our foster family when we were 18. She convinced them to co-sign student loans, then disappeared with the money." More voices joined in. A woman Emily didn't recognize identified herself as the sister of one of Julia's previous fiancés. Another guest revealed that Julia owed her $5,000 from a business investment that never materialized. The web of lies unraveled completely as person after person shared their experiences. Julia stood at the altar in her expensive gown, exposed and alone, while the man she'd planned to marry stared at her with a mixture of heartbreak and revulsion. "You don't understand," Julia said, her voice desperate now. "I love him. I really do love Jamal. The money, the lies, that was just survival. But my feelings for him are real." Maybe they were. Maybe buried beneath all the manipulation and calculation, there had been genuine emotion. But it didn't matter anymore. Love built on lies couldn't survive the harsh light of truth. Jamal spoke for the first time since the confrontation began. "It's over, Julia. We're done." 6 months later, Emily received a wedding invitation with familiar handwriting. Jamal was marrying Lillian, a teacher he'd met at their mother's church. The ceremony would be simple, held in the same community center where Emily had celebrated her own marriage. The invitation included a handwritten note. "Thank you for saving me. Thank you for showing me what real love looks like. And thank you for reminding me that family isn't about money, it's about people who love you enough to tell you the truth, even when it hurts." As she watched her brother dance with his new wife in the decorated church basement, surrounded by people who loved them both unconditionally, Emily realized that sometimes the most expensive gift you can give someone is refusing to pay the price they're asking for. Thanks for watching. Give us a like if you like the video and share with us in the comments what you think about this lovely tale. We always enjoy reading your comments.